So let me just start by telling you about the California Stewardship Network. The Morgan Family Foundation, which is a sponsor of the Sierra Business Council, and I've worked with Becky Morgan for many, many years. She was the state senator from Silicon Valley and also was the first founder, the first president of the joint venture Silicon Valley. And I was the Stanford Research Institute at the time, and we created a regional initiative which ended up being a public-private partnership of 24 local governments, businesses, and community groups, foundations, and universities in the region where I'm located, Silicon Valley. And over that time period, a number of regions have formed similar types of public-private partnerships, of which this Sierra Business Council was founded at the same time, in 1993. And so the California Stewardship Network is a network of regional activities across the state that are beginning to join up together to work on similar issues. And they've been meeting, these regional teams have been meeting every 6 months to try to build this overall effort. So what I want to do just briefly is tell you about the California Stewardship Network. My role in that is working with the Morgan Family Foundation as sort of a support to that. But each one of the members of the network are really taking responsibility. Steve represents it from the Sierra Business Council. So in the next slide, what you'll see is that most of the states covered by a type of regional partnerships. You can just sort of hit on that. The Redwood Coast, Sonoma Innovation Council, Joint Venture Silicon Valley's, San Luis Obispo, the Los Angeles County EDC, San Diego, Fresno Business Council, Sierra Business Council, Valley Vision, the Sacramento region, and the Alliance for Educational Excellence, which is out of Butte region. Each one of these, in a way, is has its own organization, its own activities, and I'll explain a little bit of what they're doing. We have had Inland Empire represented, Riverside, San Bernardino County. They're coming back in as the Inland Empire Economic Development Partnership has now been reconstituted. So essentially, most parts of the state have been represented in the California Stewardship Network. Each one of them, like I say, is doing their own thing, but what we're trying to do is figure out how do we link these things together and also be part of what's happening at the state level. So, when you look at California, and I know Steve's articulated that and probably talked a bit about all this morning when we were doing the overall presentations in your plenary sessions. We think it has two challenges. And what the California Stewardship Network has done is develop something called a shared agenda for California, based on the principle that the thriving regions will lead to a thriving state. And I'll explain that in a second. But we're obviously suffering a very difficult time in the state in terms of an economic downturn. And the numbers that came out today reaffirm that. The unemployment rate actually went up a bit. And California has really been hurt hard. We have the second highest unemployment rate after Nevada. A lot of it's in construction jobs, which were very hard hit, but it's really across the board. So we know we're in a tough spot. Every region's facing that. But we also think there's a governance crisis. And the governance crisis has to do with the fact that states having a very hard time making decisions. And it's just obvious. I mean, the legislature can't come to decisions on many activities. There's been a whole bunch of gridlock around some critical issues that have to be made. And so there's a lot of concern about this sort of overall governance of the state. So the position of the California Stewardship Network is that the best way to address both problems, the economic problem and the governance problem, is to really take the regional perspective. That the state of California, being as large as it is really made up of distinct economic regions. Every region has its own characteristics, and we have to really think about this as a set of individual regions. Once you start doing that, it begins to break down this into a little bit easier to solve problem. And trying to solve everything at the state level, the state of California is really a political jurisdiction. It's become so complex that things end up in the state capital and they all sort of get sort of, like I say, gridlock. What we're saying is that we need to think about, in today's economy, economic regions are the source of competitive advantage. And then the next point is that as this network began to work together, they began to say each region is developing its strategy, and you're developing work here in this region around specific, and I'll get to a second, strategy. We're talking about a shared agenda, which is available on the California Stewardship website. Call it Thriving Regions Lead to a Thriving State. How does the individual regions promote economic recovery?